Well, I'm back, and it's been about an hour since I made the dough. And it's the reason why I made it wait so long as an hour is because of the bran in the whole wheat flour. So letting it sit for a longer period of time has allowed it to soften a little bit, so it's not quite as sharp. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to dip my hand into a little bit of the same water, some more of the dechlorinated water. You don't want your hand to be real wet, but this helps prevent the dough from sticking to your hand during this step. So I'm going to peel up around the edge of the dough, and I'm trying to get as much of what's underneath as possible. And this is the equivalent of kneading the dough. Where a yeast bread you would knead, this particular batch I'm doing something called a stretch and fold, where I'm taking and picking up as much of the dough as possible, stretching it out, stretching the gluten, and I'm folding it over and creating layers of gluten. It's already started to ferment. And another reason to do it after 30 minutes, it helps the dough go slack or relax. It helps it relax. Working the dough builds the dough's strength, but you also need it to relax so that you can work it a little bit more. And I've gone all the way around the dough one time. And you can do it go around a couple times, or usually I do 4 or 5 stretches, and that's usually enough, and it's very strong. I can pick this up now, and it's pretty strong. And as you can see, there's not very much sticking to my hand, just a little bit here and there. But that's partially due to the water and partially due to the fact that the dough is now absorbed quite a bit more of that water that we put in earlier, and is now just a little bit less sticky. All right, so after this, we can cover it up again. I'm using a lid, but you can also use saran wrap or a plastic bag or whatever. And we're going to do the same thing again in another 30 minutes to another another hour. All right, and I'm back. This is round 2 of the stretching, and as you can see, it is grown a little. I don't think it's grown at all in size, but it is a lot smoother this time than the last time. And again with the water, I'm getting my fingers wet. And this time I think I'll talk about hydration levels in sourdough. So with sourdough, when you have a wetter dough, the more water you use, the thinner your crust will be, thinner and crispier, and the more air bubbles there will be in the bread as well. I mean, not more air bubbles, but larger. They will be larger. So when you're making a sandwich bread, you'll use a lower hydration. And it'll take a little more time to ferment and get ready to bake, but the holes in your dough will be very small, tight, and it will be a consistent batch. Oh, look at that. There's a little bubble in here. It's already started to ferment, and this time it's very homogeneous, very smooth. There's very little on my hand. So we can cover it back up. So higher hydration, faster fermentation, and gluten development. Larger air bubbles, thinner, crispier crust. Lighter hydration, smaller air bubbles, slower fermentation. And I'll come back again in another hour and do it again. And that'll be the last time I do it. And it'll go into a warm place to proof for 8 to 12 hours. All right, so this is the third time I'm going to do this. And it's been about 3 hours since I made the dough. It's been an hour since I last stretched it. As you can see, it's smoothed out quite a bit. I'll go ahead and lift this up and you can see it. So this is the third and final time I'm going to stretch it. And on this one, I'm going to test the gluten structure. I'm going to do what's called the window test. Many of you will have heard of that before, but I'm going to take a golf ball size lump of flour or dough and stretch it, and and you get it pretty thin. It starts to tear a little bit, but it got really thin, or it gets real thin. On this whole wheat, it's harder to see through it, but it's so thin that you can see light through it in your fingers. So it is tearing, and that's partially due to the flax in there. It's an inconsistency in the otherwise consistent dough, and that's partially also probably due to the tearing of gluten, but this is pretty good. Anyway, so now I'm going to do the final set of stretches before putting it in a warm place overnight. And it doesn't have to be overnight. I'm typically doing it overnight because that's just how my schedule works. But for many people, if you were to make this dough in the morning, if you stay at home or work from home or any of that, you could make this in the morning, and then you can let it proof during the daytime, and then after you do the bulk fermentation, you'll put it into the refrigerator. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in my next video. But basically, that just allows you to bake it. That does two things. It allows you to bake it on your schedule, and it allows the dough a little bit more time to do a second rise after you've shaped it. And it will get a little bit more sour. The bacteria and yeast will have a little bit more time to process the flour and all of the nutrients in it. It just gives it more time to set. And there it is. There's my dough. And I'm going to leave this on the counter overnight. It is about 70 to 72 degrees in my kitchen here. And I'll leave this here, and I'm going to see if I can get up in the morning at about 6 o'clock and shape this. Until then, I'll see you in the next video.